Now, a special presentation from 12 News.
It was one of the darkest days in American history.
This is not only an act of terrorists against the United States, an act of war.
Thousands of lives lost, landmarks destroyed, the course of history changed forever. Friends and families across the country touched by tragedy.
Unbelievably difficult. Unbelievably difficult.
As a 9-year-old, it was really tough to kind of comprehend, but I knew something, it was bigger than just a death, you know, a normal death that we've all dealt with.
20 years later, a young man who lost his mother on 9/11 reflects. And an Air Force chaplain in Washington, D.C. that day shares memories that remain all too real.
There are certain moments that are burnt in your memory, and 9/11 is one of those moments for me.
Those who answered the call to arms reflect on the complicated history of the war on terror.
All gave some gave all. I think that's important.
And those who gave all are never forgotten.
And keeping his legacy going with the veterans, with deeds, not words, that was his motto, and we'll continue to do it.
Now we remember 9/11 on its 20th anniversary and the lasting impact on southern New England. Thank you for joining us for this special presentation as we remember 9/11 on its 20th anniversary. I'm Shannon HEGY.
I'm Mike Montecalvo. Just about everyone remembers where they were on that September morning 20 years ago. Twin reflecting pools now mark the spot in Lower Manhattan where the World Trade Center once stood. 13 people from southern New England were among the thousands who died that day.
Cranston's Renee Newell was on board one of the planes that struck the Twin Towers. 20 years ago, she was remembered in a memorial service at TF Green. And she was remembered again today in a memorial service at St. Rocco's School in Johnston.
Renee's son was among those at today's ceremony. He was almost 9 when he lost his mother. I talked one-on-one with him about the day that changed his life. A moment in time.
It was a day I'll obviously never forget.
That changed the world forever.
I can't imagine the feeling that those humans faced on those airplanes.
Almost 3,000 people lost their lives on September 11th, 2001. Cranston's Renee Newell was a flight attendant for American Airlines. Renee and her friend Carol Bouchard from Warwick were on Flight 11 that Tuesday morning, headed to California and eventually Las Vegas. Renee's son Matt was a 4th grader here at St. Rocco's School in Johnston. Did you get angry about that day and what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes later at night or, you know, sometimes during the day, but not really. I try not to get angry about it because it's in the past. What am I going to get angry about now?
The average age for a child who lost a parent on 9/11 was 9. Matt turned 9 2 months later. A terrorist attack hard to comprehend for anyone, especially someone as young as Matt.
At that age, like you said, it was a terrorist attack. It really didn't make any sense. And I think it took me a while for me to truly understand like why. And that was the toughest part, was there was really no answers for some time. Remembering back to that, there was only so much my family could say to me or us in that matter, because we're still trying to put the pieces together of how did this happen, why did it happen? And I think that's the toughest part to kind of get over.
So does it bring back good memories being in the building?
Oh yeah.
We met up with Matt at St. Rocco's School. His classroom number was 205.
It's been some time since I've been back here.
Matt was in the playground with his classmates when his world was about to change.
All I heard from my teacher was that I needed to go to the principal's office because my dad was here to pick me up early. So she walked me up to my classroom where I got my bag and my lunch box. I was excited as all heck because getting to go home from school early is sometimes a blessing for us kids, but unfortunately it wasn't.
The car ride home, silent. After watching the aftermath unfold on TV, Matt and his dad went to his aunt's house, a scene he'll never forget.
At that time, that was probably the hardest part of the whole thing, was just seeing the grieving that my grandmother and my aunts had. And it was almost like hysteria in a sense. It wasn't like crying. It was yelling and screaming, and there was a lot of emotions. And again, as a 9-year-old, it was really tough to kind of comprehend. But I knew something, it was bigger than just it was bigger than just a death.
Matt tells me not recovering his mother's remains is a double-edged sword. While he would like to have a piece of her back, his family still found comfort in knowing she was not suffering. Still, questions remain.
It was the unknown, I think, is why the grieving was so intense, was because you truly had no idea really what was going to happen.
Helping with the grieving process, this tree outside the school, a reminder of what Renee and the other victims meant to so many.
And every time someone walks by there, you know, they're going to have to find or hear the story of why this is here and why it was dedicated to like you said, not just me and my family and my mother, but, you know, the rest of the people who lost a life.
He knows the reality of what happened, but wishes he could have one last chance to talk and hold his mom close to his heart.
One thing I would love to do with her, you know, and this is again in the future, but at my wedding, you know, have that dance with her.
The way you've lived your life, I'm sure your mom is extremely proud of you.
Yep.
And she lives through you.
Yeah, absolutely. She's got the best seat in the house, and there definitely are a lot of moments where I feel her on my shoulder or something happens where I'm like, thank God that I know that was her. And those bring smiles to my face every time it happens. It happens somewhat often. I always find the clock at 9/11, and I know it's just a sign, almost like a hi, how are you? So yeah, I would absolutely think she'd be happy with where I'm at as a family guy and a man.
The vast majority of Americans experience September 11th through the lens of photojournalists who covered the terrorist attacks.
Former 12 News chief photographer Les Bro was one of those journalists arriving in Lower Manhattan just hours after the towers fell.
Target 12 investigator Tim White sat down with Les, who retired 2 years ago, to reflect on his experience in covering September 11th from Lower Manhattan.
In his more than 4 decades as a photojournalist, Les Bro has had a front row seat to history, but no event compares with his assignment on September 11th, 2001. Les Bro was standing in the WPRI newsroom on the morning of 9/11 when the first plane flew into the North Tower of the World Trade Center.
The morning meeting was going on. I saw it on one of the screens over the edit booths. No sound, so I just saw a plane hitting.
Les interrupted the meeting. Then at 9:03, the second plane slammed into the South Tower.
Then the news director just turned to me and says, "You're going to New York."
Les Bro and his colleague Walt Buteau quickly packed up and hopped on I-95 South. And unlike most trips to New York,
all the highways were empty. That was another eerie feeling too.
The thicker the soot gets on the car.
When they arrived in New York, one of the first people they interviewed was a woman standing just blocks from Ground Zero.
And she was waiting for her daughter, and that's when it hit, you know, that, you know, she was standing there for 5-6 hours waiting for her daughter, and her daughter, you know, trying to call her up and nothing. So, and there was a couple of the women we talked to with the same story. They're just waiting for loved ones.
And I'm going to guess, unfortunately, that you probably don't know the outcome of that woman's story.
No.
The closer you get to Ground Zero...
Gathering the images and interviews was one challenge, but getting that video back to Rhode Island and into the newscast was another. They made their way to CNN, but under tight security, the guard would not let them in to feed the video back to 12 News.
Kept on saying, no, you know, we're shut down, nobody's getting in. And somebody that worked for CNN that used to work for us walked by and saw me.
A former Channel 12 employee working at CNN spots you.
Spots me and comes over and says hello. So I says, you know, we have the video, we shot a story, we have to get it back. And he said, come on up. And that's how we got that 5 and 6 o'clock story on the air.
For nearly a week, they filed story after story, capturing images and interviews that would become a record to history. For those who know Les, who has always been calm, even in breaking news situations, he was the right photojournalist for such an extreme assignment. Everyone here knows how low-key you are, and I do have to wonder if in a situation like that, you have to be particularly gifted at stripping emotion.
Well, you do. Yeah, you can. You know, you know. I mean, you get emotional when you're talking to a mother that you know just lost their daughter, and they're sitting there 6 hours waiting for a phone call or her to walk out of the rubble, you know, you become a robot, you know, and you just know what you have to do, and you just do it to try to get on the air and get the stories.
Les tells me at the end of the day, when he put the camera down, that's when he could take a moment to acknowledge those emotions and reflect on a personal level what he experienced that day. With the Target 12 investigators, Tim White, 12 News.
184 people were killed when one of the hijacked airliners crashed into the Pentagon. Today, benches for each victim sits outside the headquarters of the U.S. Department of Defense. Retired Air Force Colonel Monsignor Carlo Montecalvo remembers that day all too well. He was Chief of Personnel for the Air Force Chaplain Service and was ordered back to his post in Washington just after the attacks.
You could see the Pentagon burning. You could smell the Pentagon burning. And that's because what they once thought was a leak of water was thousands of gallons of fuel that was burning when that plane impacted the Pentagon. I was like, all of us were just dumbfounded. We couldn't believe that the Pentagon, which we would consider like the mothership because all orders went from that, was attacked. And how would a plane come in and hit the Pentagon? We were just incredulous that this was going on in our country, knowing that we were a group of chaplains who supported men and women in uniform, who were to provide for the defense of our country. And here our headquarters is now attacked.
Monsignor Montecalvo says while people were trying to get out of Washington, many were going in to save lives.
And of course, countless Americans answered the call to serve in the war on terror. One of them, Adam DeCiccio, who enlisted in the Army just days before 9/11 and served in Afghanistan and Iraq. He died last year, leaving behind a loving family and a grateful community.
Tomorrow, the veterans of foreign wars will rededicate the VFW Hall on West Shore Road in Warwick in his name, a lasting tribute to a man who put others first, even as he battled his own demons.
I focus on all the positive things and good things he did for everybody. He went out of his way. I'm not focusing on his death. And keeping his legacy going with the veterans, with deeds, not words. That was his motto, and we'll continue to do it.
The VFW dedication is Saturday afternoon at 1, and it is open to the public.
Coming up next, from the ashes of tragedy to a triumph of the human spirit.
We remember the outpouring of pride and patriotism on display in southern New England in the wake of 9/11.
Bells rang at the Naval War College in Newport Friday in memory of students and staff killed 20 years ago.
A piece of the Pentagon with the 11 names stands on the War College campus. A wreath was laid there with a ribbon reading, "We will never forget." After the initial shock and terror of what we witnessed on 9/11 came profound grief and sadness.
And while we all grieve in different ways, Americans found a way to comfort themselves and others through a collective display of patriotism. We saw that display right here in southern New England. The parking lots of Cardi's furniture stores transformed into a massive display of patriotism.
These people are coming out, they're working their hearts out, everyone's smiling.
What do you remember looking out on that crowd?
Oh, gives you goosebumps.
Ron and Pete Cardi remember those moments 20 years ago vividly.
They came from everywhere, to the point where the state police had shut down the exit ramps because you couldn't get the cars in the lot. That's how many people were there.
Southern New Englanders came out by the thousands to support a fundraiser for supplies for the recovery crews in New York City. USA! USA! But for everyone in that parking lot, this was more than just a fundraiser. It was a way to cope, a way to grieve, a way to feel less helpless.
It was kind of like going to church. Everyone felt to use the term violated, because we were attacked, and there's no other way to say it because that's what happened, and we were all in the same boat.
Just like in those parking lots, patriotism was on display all across southern New England in the wake of the unimaginable. From people buying American flags to people painting them.
Our country is what they need to see and how it should be. Togetherness, love, friends.
At TF Green, a massive round of applause as the American flag was hung from the rafters. One onlooker bursting into song.
And the rockets glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there.
Grief spurring not only American pride, but action.
Benefit the victims in New York! Well, I feel helpless pretty much, and since we can't be fighting on the front line, at least I can do what I know how to do and help the country as much as I can.
As we open wounds on this 20th anniversary that may never have fully healed, we can look back knowing our country rallied. A spirit of patriotism that may have fizzled since, but that the Carty brothers believe will return.
There was no Republican, no Democrat, no independent. It was just, everyone was one. And I think that is difficult as you're seeing some of the situation now. I think you're starting to see people get it, and I think it'll come back.
When we continue, a close bond among those who served.
A group of veterans from the War on Terror supporting each other through difficult times through walks in the park.
The War on Terror has left scars, both visible and invisible, on so many who served.
Some local veterans talk about how their battle buddies got them through some difficult times. We take you to Johnston and the Battles Walk.
Do we know anybody going to boot camp soon? This is important because it brings people together and gives them a sense of community.
Walking.
So is that near the seaport or no?
In hopes of leaving no one behind.
Yes, it's absolutely a stress reliever. Anybody that just needs to come out, needs to talk to somebody, doesn't even want to talk to somebody. You want to sit on the bench and watch us walk by and just know that there's somebody there. If you need resources, we're here for you.
Army vet Kristen Pyatt.
If you're not 15 minutes early or 15 minutes late, soldier,
who served in Afghanistan, is organizer for Battles Walk.
We're going to have to make you an honorary member.
Group of veterans and their families who meet at Johnston Memorial Park. Kristen, why do you come out here twice a week?
I come out here because as a veteran, I've deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. I have a lot of battle buddies that deployed with me, and over the years, I mean, we've gone through a lot of stuff. I didn't prep for PT when I went into the Army. Just knowing that there's a time and a place that you can go, that someone will be there who knows what you've been through. It's just knowing that you have that resource is huge for me, and I feel like it's huge for them as well.
What was it like being there?
I was young, so it was my first time really away from home. So, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was absolutely scared. I grew up real fast, and my battle buddies became my family. Like, I would literally trust every single person I deployed with my life, and that was just eye-opening to have that kind of support system and that kind of network with me.
What do you think when you see the images of Afghanistan and what's happening?
It makes my heart hurt. It definitely does. It brings up some memories that I'm not really sure that me or my battle buddies are ready to deal with.
What do you want to talk about?
Bobby Abruzzi retired from the Army in 2010 and says everybody is battling something.
Life, work, Afghanistan, school, goals, dreams. I think especially Afghanistan the last few weeks, never more important than you never leave a buddy behind. All gave some gave all. I think that's important.
Alexius De Silva says the exercise is important.
I think it's really important. I know I struggle with my mental health on a day-to-day basis. It's good to be able to talk to other people who understand what you go through, and you can relate to them on a different level than civilians would understand.
A support system here, like they all experience thousands of miles away.
Like, no doubt, you will die for each other. And it's not that we were trained to die for each other, it's because you develop that bond, because you're in that situation that you need each other and you know you need each other.
The Battles Walk takes place Monday and Wednesday nights at 6 at JOHNSTON Memorial Park. Everyone's invited. Now, resources are available for veterans and their families. We have that for you on our website, WPRI.com.
We want to thank you for joining us for this special presentation remembering 9/11 on its 20th anniversary. We leave you now with a tribute to all of those who were lost.